He thought the coordinated attacks that burned his warehouses and froze his accounts were an enemy's declaration of war. But when his cleaning maid pointed to the bug under his own desk and said, "This is an inside job," the real betrayal began. Now, with his entire empire collapsing by the minute, the fallen king has one dangerous question for the woman who knows too much. Who the hell are you? If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. The rain-streaked windows of the abandoned high-rise reflected the city that once bowed to Romolo De Luca, now blurred and unreachable, like power slipping through blood-stained fingers. At the center of the dim penthouse office sat a man carved from ambition and violence, a king whose throne had been kicked out from beneath him. But tonight, Romolo wasn't sitting on a throne. He was hunched over a steel desk, surrounded by the wreckage of his empire. It started with a phone call at 2:47 a.m., then another, then the flood. Within an hour, every pillar of his criminal network crumbled. Warehouses burned across New Jersey, bank accounts frozen in the Caymans. Soldiers executed in coordinated strikes from Boston to Philadelphia. Businesses raided simultaneously across 3 states. The organization he'd spent 2 decades building was being systematically dismantled by someone who knew exactly where to cut. Romolo's tattooed hand slammed against the desk, knuckles splitting. No, this isn't random. His phone buzzed again. Another loss. Another territory seized. Another ally dead or defected. He wanted to throw the device through the window, watch it fall 40 stories into the indifferent city below. The merger with the Chicago family's worth territories and millions in monthly revenue was supposed to finalize at dawn. Every minute that passed cost him leverage, respect, blood. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glowed with indifferent neon. New York never stopped. It simply devoured men like him when they showed weakness. He'd dismissed his remaining men hours ago, unable to stomach their fear or answer their questions about what went wrong. He wanted silence, control, something that felt like solid ground, but the ground kept shifting beneath him. Then he heard footsteps in the corridor, soft, steady, followed by the gentle squeak of cleaning cart wheels. He looked up, jaw clenched, eyes dangerous. A woman in a navy and white maid uniform stood in the doorway, startled to find him still there. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly. Her eyes, sharp, observant, almost calculating, met his with cautious curiosity, not fear. Most people looked at Romolo De Luca and saw death. She looked at him and saw something else entirely. Romolo forced a harsh laugh. "Relax. You're not interrupting. Just watching my entire life burn down." She hesitated, then stepped forward carefully, hands folded in front of her uniform. "Are you all right, sir?" "Define all right," Romolo muttered, gesturing at the scattered papers, empty gun magazines, unpaid debts covering his desk. "My empire just died in front of me. But hey, at least the floors will be clean." Her gaze flicked across the room, not at him, but through the chaos. At the documents, the devices, the patterns hidden in plain sight. Her eyes moved too fast, too precisely, not the wandering attention of someone who cleaned offices. The focused assessment of someone trained to see what others missed. "That's an inside job," she said quietly. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. He turned toward her, eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" She nodded slightly, voice steady despite his intensity. "Someone close to you orchestrated this. The timing's too precise. These attacks, they're not opportunistic. They're surgical." Romolo stared. The woman pushing a cleaning cart was reading his downfall like a blueprint his own security team couldn't decipher. He wanted to dismiss her, laugh in her face, send her away, but something in her eyes stopped him. Not arrogance, not pity, certainty. He stepped aside slowly, voice low and dangerous. "Show me." She approached the desk without hesitation, fingers moving across the documents with surgical precision. She picked up an envelope, examined the postmark, the handwriting. "This wasn't delivered through your normal channels." She pointed at the desk phone. "That's not standard equipment. That's surveillance." She pulled a financial report closer. "These transfers are structured to look operational, but they're siphoning funds systematically." Her name tag caught the dim light. Clarice. Romolo felt the room tilt. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's seen betrayal before," she replied, finally meeting his eyes directly. And someone who refuses to watch it happen again without doing something. Her hand hovered over a small device wedged beneath his desk phone, barely visible. Professional grade. This bug has been here for weeks, maybe months. Whoever placed it had unrestricted access to your office, your calls, your plans. For the first time that night, something other than rage flickered in Romolo's chest. Hope. Dangerous, fragile hope. Clarice's expression remained focused, professional. I need to see your financial records, communication logs, personnel files from anyone with high-level access. Romolo hesitated. Trusting anyone right now felt like putting a gun to his own head. But he was already bleeding out. What did he have to lose? He pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the third drawer, retrieving a sealed hard drive. Everything's here. But if you're playing me, she glanced up briefly, and for just a moment, he saw something in her eyes, pain, recognition, shared understanding of what betrayal costs. I'm not, but when we find who did this, don't forget I was here. That edge of quiet defiance made him almost smile despite the blood on his knuckles. Deal. She took the drive, inserted it into his laptop, and began working with the kind of confidence born from years of practice. Clarice wasn't guessing. She knew what she was looking for. We're going to find them, she said without looking up. But I need silence, and I need time. Done, Romolo replied, watching her work with something close to fascination. For the first time in his violent life, he wasn't the one giving orders, and somehow, that felt like the beginning of something he couldn't yet name. The laptop screen cast blue light across Clarice's face as her fingers danced across the keyboard with unsettling precision. Romolo watched from behind her, arms crossed, trying to reconcile the woman in the Maid uniform with the person systematically dissecting his financial infrastructure like a surgeon cutting into flesh. She wasn't guessing. Every click, every command, every directory she opened, it was methodical, practiced, professional. How long did you work in intelligence? Romolo asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them for 20 minutes. Clarice didn't look up. Long enough to know what coordinated betrayal looks like. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. She pulled up a spreadsheet, eyes scanning rows of transactions. Your northern territories, when did you notice the first irregularities? Romolo moved closer, studying the screen over her shoulder. 3 months ago. Small things. Shipments arriving late, payments delayed, nothing major. That's when it started. Clarice highlighted a series of transfers. These payments, they're coded as operational expenses, but look at the routing numbers. They're being funneled through shell companies in Delaware, then dispersed to accounts in the Caymans. His jaw tightened. Someone's been stealing from me for 3 months? Not stealing, preparing. She opened another file. Whoever did this wasn't just taking your money. They were mapping your entire operation. Every transaction tells them who you trust, where you're vulnerable, how you move resources. Romolo felt cold fury settling into his bones. You're saying someone studied me like a goddamn science project? Yes. Clarice finally turned to face him, her gray-green eyes unflinching. And they knew you well enough to know exactly when to strike. Tonight wasn't random. The Chicago merger, the timing of the raids, the simultaneous attacks, someone with intimate knowledge of your schedule orchestrated this. The words hung between them like a blade. Who? Romolo's voice dropped to something dangerous. I don't know yet. Clarice returned to the screen. But I will. He studied her profile, the set of her jaw, the controlled breathing, the way her eyes moved with calculated efficiency. This wasn't amateur curiosity. This was training. Deep, extensive, government-grade training. You weren't just in intelligence, Romolo said slowly. You were good at it. Clarice's fingers paused on the keyboard for just a fraction of a second. I was the best at what I did. So what happened? She was quiet for a long moment. The rain continued its assault on the windows, filling the silence with white noise. When she finally spoke, her voice carried weight that had nothing to do with volume. A mission went wrong. People died who shouldn't have. And suddenly the same government that trained me decided I knew too much, asked too many questions, made too much noise about things they wanted buried. She pulled up another file. So I disappeared, changed my name, took jobs where people don't look twice at you, where you're invisible. Until tonight, she echoed. Romolo moved around the desk to face her directly. You could have walked past this office, ignored me, stayed invisible. Why didn't you? Clarice met his eyes, and for the first time since she'd entered his office, he saw past the professional mask to something raw beneath. Because I know what it's like to be destroyed by people you trusted, to watch everything you built collapse because someone close to you decided you were expendable. Her words cut through his anger, finding something deeper recognition. And because, she continued, voice softer now, invisible doesn't mean I stopped caring about right and wrong. It just means I had to choose my battles more carefully. She gestured at the screen. This is a battle worth choosing. Romolo felt something shift in his chest. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. This woman, who had every reason to stay hidden, was choosing to step into his nightmare, choosing to help him when she had nothing to gain and everything to lose. What do you need from me? He asked. Names, Clarice said immediately. Everyone with access to your financial systems. Everyone who knew about the Chicago merger. Everyone who could have placed surveillance in this office. She pulled out a notepad from her cleaning cart, incongruous but practical. And I need you to be honest. Because if you lie to protect someone, they'll kill you before we find them. Romolo nodded slowly. He began listing names, watching as Clarice wrote with the same precise efficiency she brought to everything else. Soldiers, accountants, lawyers, family members, people he'd known for decades. When he reached the name Matteo Ruggieri, something flickered across Clarice's face. What? Romola demanded. Nothing. Keep going. No, you reacted. Why? Clarice looked up from her notepad. How long have you known Matteo? 20 years. Since we were kids running numbers in Brooklyn. He's my underboss, my brother. Romolo's eyes narrowed. Why? Because his name appears in these files more than anyone else's, Clarice said carefully. And because the offshore accounts receiving your siphoned funds, 3 of them have transaction patterns that match his documented spending habits. The room seemed to contract around Romolo. You're wrong. I might be. Clarice's voice remained steady, clinical, but the data doesn't lie. And if I've learned anything from my years in intelligence, it's that the people closest to you are always the most dangerous. They know where all your bodies are buried because they helped you bury them. Romolo wanted to argue, to defend Matteo, to explain why it was impossible. But the evidence was right there on the screen, glowing like an accusation. We need to confirm it, Clarice said. Before you confront him, before you do anything, we need absolute proof, because if I'm right and you tip him off, you won't get a second chance. Romolo's hands curled into fists. And if you're right, what then? Clarice's eyes held his, unflinching. Then we make sure he pays for every life he cost you. In that moment, Romolo realized something terrifying. Clarice wasn't just helping him survive. She was preparing him for war. Dawn broke over Manhattan in shades of gray and gold. But inside the penthouse, time had ceased to exist. Romolo and Clarice had been working through the night, tracing digital breadcrumbs that led deeper into the conspiracy with each passing hour. Empty coffee cups littered the desk. Clarice's maid uniform looked rumpled now, her hair falling loose from its neat tie. Romolo had shed his jacket hours ago, shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing the full canvas of tattoos that mapped his violent history across his forearms. Here, Clarice said suddenly, pointing at the screen. Look at this. Romolo moved behind her, studying the financial document she'd isolated. It was a ledger from one of his legitimate businesses, a construction company in Queens. What am I looking at? The date. Clarice highlighted a transaction. This payment was made 4 days before your warehouse in Newark was raided. It's coded as equipment rental, but look at the recipient. Romolo squinted at the routing information. His blood ran cold. That's a holding company. Matteo set up 3 years ago for tax purposes. Exactly. Clarice pulled up another document. And here's another payment. 6 days before your shipment was intercepted in Boston. Same company. Same pattern. She turned to face him. Matteo wasn't just stealing from you, Romolo. He was funding the operations against you. The words hit like physical blows. Romolo backed away from the desk, hand running through his hair, breath coming harder. No, there has to be another explanation. There isn't. Clarice's voice was gentle but firm. I've spent the last 5 hours looking for one. The evidence is everywhere once you know what to look for. Bank transfers, communication timestamps, location data. Matteo was meeting with members of the Santoro family at the same time your operations were being compromised. The Santoros? Romolo's voice dropped to something lethal. Giovanni Santoro has been my enemy for 15 years. Matteo knows that. He hates them as much as I do. They killed his cousin in '09. Did they? Clarice pulled up a death certificate, a police report. Or did Matteo tell you they did? Because according to this, his cousin died in a car accident. Single vehicle. No foul play suspected. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Romolo's feet. How many years had he believed Matteo's story? How many decisions had he made based on a lie designed to cement loyalty, to create a shared enemy, to make Matteo seem incapable of the very betrayal he was planning? Why? The word came out broken. We built this together. I trusted him with everything. I made him rich, powerful. Why would he destroy it? Clarice stood, moving around the desk to face him directly. Because some men don't want to be second. They want to be first. And the only way to take a throne from a king is to make him fall. Romolo's hands trembled with barely contained rage. I should have seen it. I should have known. No. Clarice's voice cut through his self-recrimination. That's what people like Matteo count on: your guilt, your self-blame. They spend years building your trust, learning your blind spots, becoming indispensable. You couldn't have seen it because he made sure you wouldn't. You saw it in one night. Because I'm looking from the outside. Clarice's eyes held his. And because I've been betrayed by people I trusted too. I know the patterns, the small inconsistencies that don't make sense until you see the whole picture. Romolo sank into the chair, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. 20 years of brotherhood, loyalty, shared blood, all of it a performance. Every laugh, every risk they'd taken together. Every moment Matteo had stood at his side calculated, weaponized. How long? Romolo asked quietly. How long has he been planning this? Clarice returned to the laptop, scrolling through files. Based on these patterns, at least 18 months. Maybe longer. The earliest suspicious transaction I can find is from April 2 years ago. 2 years. Romolo's voice was hollow. He's been destroying me for 2 years and I never noticed. That's what makes him dangerous, Clarice said. He's patient, methodical. He didn't just want your empire, he wanted to dismantle you completely. Financially, psychologically, socially. He wanted you isolated, desperate, and broken before he made his final move. And what's his final move? Clarice pulled up an encrypted message she'd managed to decode. According to this communication with Giovanni Santoro, Matteo is meeting with your remaining territory bosses tomorrow night. He's going to present himself as the stable leadership they need in this crisis. He'll claim you've lost control, that you're compromised, that following him is their only path to survival. Romolo's jaw clenched so hard Clarice heard his teeth grind. He's going to take my family, my soldiers, everything I built. That's the plan. Clarice closed the laptop. But plans only work when your enemy doesn't know they're coming. Something sparked in Romolo's eyes, the first glimpse of the man who'd built an empire through sheer will and ruthless intelligence. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Clarice said carefully, that we let Matteo think his plan is working. Let him believe you're defeated, isolated, desperate. Let him get comfortable. And then we take everything from him the way he took everything from you. Clarice's voice carried an edge that reminded Romolo she wasn't just an analyst, she was someone who'd operated in the shadows of day, government intelligence, who understood psychological warfare at levels most criminals never touched. But we need proof. Absolute, undeniable proof that even your most loyal soldiers can't dismiss. Romolo stood slowly, the rage crystallizing into something colder, sharper. How do we get it? We make him confess. Clarice met his eyes. But first we need to understand something else. What? Why Giovanni Santoro would help Matteo destroy you but not kill you? Clarice pulled up another file. Because according to these messages, Giovanni specifically ordered that you be left alive. Broken, humiliated, powerless but alive. There's a reason for that. Romolo felt ice spreading through his veins. What reason? I don't know yet, Clarice admitted. But whatever it is, it's worse than death. The implication hung between them like a noose. We need to find out, Romolo said. We will. Clarice's voice held absolute certainty. But you need to prepare yourself. Because the deeper we dig, the worse this is going to get. Romolo looked at this woman who'd appeared in his life like an unexpected guardian angel, or perhaps a witness sent to document his complete destruction. Either way, she was all he had. I'm already in hell, he said quietly. Can't get much worse. Clarice's expression suggested otherwise, but she didn't argue. Outside, the city fully awakened to a new day. Inside, two people prepared for war. The question came as Romolo poured them both coffee from a pot he'd somehow managed to brew without leaving the office. His hands were steadier now, focused by purpose, rather than shattered by despair. Why did you really leave intelligence? Clarice accepted the cup, wrapping both hands around it like she was cold despite the room's warmth. For a long moment, she said nothing, staring into the dark liquid as if it held answers she didn't want to speak aloud. "You don't have to," Romolo started. "The Santoro family," Clarice interrupted quietly. "That's why I left." Romolo froze mid-sip. "What?" 3 years ago, I was part of a federal task force investigating organized crime networks on the East Coast. Clarice's voice was steady, but Romolo heard the tremor beneath it. We'd been building a case against Giovanni Santoro for 18 months. Racketeering, trafficking, murder, we had everything we needed to put him away for life. She set the coffee down, fingers tracing the rim of the cup. I went undercover, placed myself inside his operation as a financial consultant for one of his legitimate businesses. It took 6 months to gain access to his inner circle, to see the things that would bury him. Her eyes distant now, seeing something Romolo couldn't. I documented everything. Every transaction, every meeting, every order Giovanni gave. I was their star witness. What happened? Clarice's jaw tightened. Someone leaked my identity. I still don't know who someone inside the bureau. Someone with access to classified personnel files. 2 days before I was supposed to testify, 3 of Giovanni's soldiers showed up at my apartment. Romolo's hands curled into fists. Did they? I wasn't there. I'd been staying at a safe house. Bureau protocol before major testimony. Clarice's voice dropped. But my partner was. Agent Michael Torres. He'd gone to pick up some files I'd left behind. The silence that followed told Romolo everything. They killed him thinking it was me. Shot him 6 times in my living room and burned the apartment to destroy evidence. Clarice's eyes glistened but no tears fell. By the time I found out, the case had collapsed. Without me to testify, without the physical evidence they'd destroyed, the prosecution had nothing. Giovanni walked free 3 months later. Jesus Christ, Romolo breathed. The Bureau offered me witness protection, a new life somewhere far away. Clarice finally looked at him. But I knew Giovanni. I'd studied him for 18 months. Witness protection wouldn't stop him. He doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive. He'd spend years searching for me just to make a point. So you disappeared on your own. I disappeared completely. No bureau support, no official documentation. I became nobody. The invisible woman cleaning offices, making minimum wage, living in places where people don't ask questions. She gestured at her Maid uniform with bitter irony. Turns out intelligence training makes you excellent at blending into backgrounds. Romolo processed this, pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. Clarice. If Matteo's been working with Giovanni, then Giovanni knows who I am. She finished the thought he couldn't. Or he will soon. If he doesn't already. The implications crashed over them both like a wave. This wasn't just about Romolo's fallen empire anymore. This was about 2 people marked for destruction by the same man, caught in the same web of betrayal. "Why didn't you run?" Romolo demanded. "The second you saw those files, the second you realized Giovanni was involved, why didn't you disappear again?" Clarice stood, moving to the rain-streaked windows. Manhattan sprawled below them, indifferent and eternal. "Because I'm tired of running, tired of being invisible, tired of watching bad men win because good people are too afraid to fight back." She turned to face him, and Romolo saw something fierce burning behind her carefully controlled exterior. Michael died in my place. He died because I was trying to do the right thing, and someone betrayed that. For 3 years, I've lived in the shadows, telling myself it was survival, that staying hidden was the smart play. Her voice grew stronger, but it wasn't survival, it was cowardice. And when I walked into this office tonight and saw what they'd done to you, I realized something. What? That running doesn't make you safe. It just makes you alone. Clarice's eyes locked onto his. At least if I fight for something. And if Giovanni comes for me, at least I'll see him coming. Romolo felt something crack open in his chest, a recognition of shared damage, shared fury, shared refusal to stay broken. This woman standing in her maid's uniform was more dangerous than half his former soldiers. Not because of violence, but because of something rarer. The courage to stand when standing meant certain death. "He will come," Romolo said quietly. "The second Matteo tells him you're here, helping me, Giovanni will send everything he has." "I know. You could still leave. Right now, I'd understand." Clarice smiled, small, sad, but genuine. "No, you wouldn't. Because you're not the kind of man who runs either, even when you should. That's why you're still here, in this office, planning revenge, instead of fleeing to another country." She was right. Romolo had never run from anything in his life, even when wisdom demanded it. "So what do we do?" he asked. "We finish what I started 3 years ago." Clarice returned to the desk, opening her laptop with renewed determination. "We take down Giovanni Santoro. But this time we do it right. This time, we make sure he can't walk away. And Matteo? Matteo is the key to everything." Clarice pulled up the encrypted messages again. His communications with Giovanni, his financial records, his movements, there are evidence. But more than that, Matteo knows things about Giovanni's current operations that I never had access to 3 years ago. So we flip him. No. Clarice's eyes went cold. We break him. We take everything he values, his reputation, his power, his freedom, and we use him to destroy the man he sold you to. Then we make sure Giovanni knows exactly who gave us the information to bury him. Romolo understood the psychology immediately. Giovanni wouldn't just face justice, he'd face it knowing Matteo, his co-conspirator, his tool, had become the weapon that destroyed him. "That's ruthless," Romolo said. "I learned from the best," Clarice replied. "And Giovanni Santoro taught me that mercy is what gets good people killed." Outside, morning traffic began its symphony of horns and engines. Inside, 2 ghosts planned their resurrection. Romolo hadn't slept in 36 hours, but exhaustion sharpened him rather than dulled him. He stood before the bathroom mirror in the penthouse, studying his reflection with clinical detachment. The man staring back looked haunted eyes bloodshot, jaw shadowed with stubble, tattoos standing out starkly against pale skin. "Perfect. You look like hell," Clarice said from the doorway. She'd changed from her maid uniform into simple black pants and a gray sweater she'd retrieved from her locker. Without the costume, she looked different, harder, more defined, more like who she really was. "That's the point." Romolo splashed cold water on his face. "Matteo needs to see a broken man, someone desperate enough to make mistakes. Are you sure you can pull this off?" Clarice leaned against the doorframe, studying him with professional assessment. "He knows you. He'll be looking for signs you suspect him." "I've been lying to people my entire life." Romolo dried his face roughly. "I can play desperate for one conversation. This isn't just any conversation. This is Matteo, your brother." Clarice's voice softened slightly. 20 years of history between you. He'll read things you don't even know you're communicating." Romolo met her eyes in the mirror. "Then I'll give him what he wants to see. A king who's fallen so far he can't see the knife in his back." The plan was simple but dangerous. Romolo would call Matteo, summon him to the penthouse under the guise of needing counsel. He'd play the part of the desperate boss, seeking guidance from his most trusted advisor. Meanwhile, Clarice would remain hidden, recording everything from the adjacent room, watching for the tells that would confirm his betrayal. "He'll be armed," Clarice warned. "And if he suspects anything, I can handle Matteo." Romolo's voice carried an edge. "I taught him everything he knows. That's what worries me." At 10 a.m., Romolo made the call. It rang 3 times before Matteo's familiar voice answered, smooth and concerned. "Boss, Jesus, I've been trying to reach you all night. Where are you?" "The penthouse. I need you here. Now." Romolo injected just enough exhaustion and defeat into his tone. "Everything's falling apart, Matteo. I need your help." A pause. Microscopic, but there. "I'm coming." 20 minutes. The line went dead. Clarice emerged from where she'd been listening. "Did you hear it?" "Hear what?" The pause. The hesitation before he agreed. She moved to set up recording equipment. "He's calculating, deciding how to play this. Or he's just surprised I'm still in the city. Maybe." Clarice didn't sound convinced. "But in my experience, innocent people don't pause before offering help to friends in crisis. Guilty people do because they're deciding which mask to wear." Romolo checked his gun, then concealed it in the desk drawer close enough to reach, hidden enough not to provoke. "Get in position." "And Clarice?" "Yes? If this goes wrong, if he figures it out, don't try to help me. Just get out." Her expression hardened. "Not a chance. I'm serious. Giovanni's soldiers could be minutes behind him. If Matteo's bringing backup, then we handle it together." Clarice's voice left no room for argument. "I didn't survive 3 years in hiding just to run when things get dangerous. We see this through." Before Romolo could respond, she disappeared into the adjacent room, door closing to a crack. He was alone with his thoughts, his rage, and the approaching footsteps of betrayal wearing a familiar face. 18 minutes later, the elevator chimed. Matteo Ruggieri stepped into the penthouse looking exactly as he always did, Expensive suit perfectly tailored, dark hair slicked back, movements fluid and confident. But his eyes, sharp and calculating, swept the room before landing on Romolo. "Boss." Matteo's voice carried perfect concern. "You look terrible. What the hell happened?" Romolo slumped in his chair, the picture of defeat. Everything. The raids, the accounts, the territories. It's all gone, Matteo. 20 years of work destroyed in one night. Matteo approached slowly, studying him. "I heard about the warehouses, the freezes on the accounts. I've been working my contacts, trying to understand who's behind this." "And?" Romolo looked up, desperate hope painted across his features. "The Santoro family." Matteo's delivery was perfect, the right amount of anger, the right amount of conviction. Giovanni orchestrated everything. He's been planning this for months, maybe longer. Somehow he got intelligence on our operations, our financial structures, our security protocols. How? Romolo's hands trembled, not entirely an act. How did Giovanni get that deep into our network? Matteo shook his head, pacing the office. There's a leak. Has to be. Someone inside our organization fed him everything he needed. He turned to face Romolo. I've been trying to identify who, but whoever it is, they're good. Covered their tracks perfectly. Romolo watched Matteo's performance with bitter admiration. The concern, the anger, the determination, all of it so perfectly calibrated. No wonder he'd never suspected. Matteo had been rehearsing this role for 2 years. What do I do? Romolo asked, voice breaking slightly. The Chicago merger's dead. My soldiers are scattered. My accounts are frozen. I'm finished, Matteo. Completely finished. No. Matteo placed a hand on his shoulder, the touch of a brother, a friend. You're not finished. We rebuild. We hit Giovanni back, harder than he hit us. But first, we need to secure what's left. How? Matteo pulled up a chair, sitting across from Romolo. His expression shifted subtly, still concerned, but with an edge of something else beneath. The territory bosses are scared. They need leadership, stability. I can reach out to them, consolidate what remains of our network, present a unified front. You want to organize the families? Just temporarily, until you're back on your feet. Matteo's voice was smooth, reasonable. Someone has to keep things running, keep everyone from making panicked decisions. Let me be your voice while you figure out how to rebuild. There it was, the pivot, the moment Matteo stopped pretending to support and started maneuvering to replace. Romolo let silence stretch between them, watching Matteo's micro-expressions, the slight tension around his eyes, the way his breathing steadied, controlled. He was waiting to see if Romolo would take the bait. When? Romolo finally asked. Tomorrow night. I've already been in contact with most of them. They're willing to meet. Without me? They're afraid, boss. They need to see strength. And right now. Matteo gestured at Romolo's disheveled state. You need time to recover. Let me handle this. Let me protect what you built. Romolo studied the man he'd called brother for 20 years. The man who'd stood beside him through wars, losses, victories. The man who was systematically dismantling everything they'd created together. Okay, Romolo said quietly. Do it. Keep the family together. I trust you, Matteo. You're the only person I have left. Something flickered across Matteo's face, triumph, quickly masked. You won't regret this. I know. Romolo stood, extending his hand. You've never let me down. Matteo clasped his hand firmly. And I never will. The lie sat between them like a corpse neither acknowledged. After Matteo left, Clarice emerged from hiding, face pale. Did you get it? Romolo asked. Every word, every facial expression, every tell. She held up the recording device. He's meeting with your territory bosses tomorrow night to take control of your organization. And Romolo? What? When he said you won't regret this, his pupil dilation. His micro-expressions, he was thinking about something that made him happy. Clarice's voice went cold. He was imagining your death. Romolo felt nothing. The rage had crystallized into something beyond emotion, pure, focused intent. Then let's give him what he wants, Romolo said quietly. Let him think he's won. Let him gather my soldiers and make his play. And then we show everyone exactly who Matteo Ruggieri really is. The attack came at 2:37 a.m., 48 hours after Matteo's visit. Clarice was alone in the penthouse office, cross-referencing encrypted communications from Giovanni's network with Matteo's financial transactions. Romolo had left an hour earlier to make contact with one of his few remaining loyal soldiers, a man named Vincent who'd served him since the beginning. She heard it before she saw it, the elevator arriving at a floor that required keycard access, the mechanical hum stopping at the penthouse level. But no one had called the elevator. No one was supposed to be coming. Clarice's training kicked in instantly. She closed the laptop, powered it down, grabbed the hard drive containing all their evidence, and moved toward the escape route she'd mapped the first night, a service stairwell accessible through the kitchen. The penthouse door exploded inward with a crash that shook the walls. 3 men poured through, professionals, not street soldiers. They moved with military precision, weapons drawn, sweeping rooms with coordinated efficiency. One spoke into a radio. Target location. Searching now. Clarice pressed herself against the wall behind the kitchen island, controlling her breathing, calculating distances and angles. Her weapon, a small pistol she'd acquired through old intelligence contacts, was in her hand, safety off. She recognized the lead man's voice. Carlo Messina, one of Giovanni Santoro's senior enforcers. She documented him during her undercover operation 3 years ago. Suspected of 11 murders, never convicted. She was here, Carlo said, examining the still warm coffee cup on the desk. Computer's off but warm. She left minutes ago. Check the bedrooms, another voice commanded. Bathroom, closets. She's in this apartment. Clarice weighed her options with cold calculation. 3 armed men between her and the elevator. The service stairs were 20 feet away, across open space. Windows weren't an option 40 stories up. She could try to fight, but 3-on-1 against professionals meant near certain death, so she did something they wouldn't expect. She waited. The men searched methodically, bedrooms, bathroom, closets, getting closer to the kitchen. When Carlo passed within 6 feet of her position, she stepped out silently behind him, pressed her gun against his spine, and spoke quietly. Tell them you found nothing. We're leaving together. If your friends shoot, you die first. Carlo tensed, professional enough to know she meant it. Clear in the master bedroom, he called out calmly. Copy, came the response from deeper in the penthouse. Clarice kept the gun pressed firm, walking Carlo backward toward the service door. They were 10 feet away when one of the other men emerged from the hallway. He saw them instantly. Contact, he shouted, raising his weapon. Clarice shoved Carlo forward into the line of fire and dove behind the kitchen island as gunshots erupted. Carlo took 2 rounds meant for her, collapsing with a grunt. Clarice fired back, calculated shots designed to suppress rather than kill, buying seconds, not fighting a war she couldn't win. She sprinted for the service door as bullets tore through cabinets and walls around her, made it through, slammed the steel door shut, and ran down the concrete stairs 3 at a time. Behind her, the door burst open. Footsteps thundered in pursuit. Clarice descended 12 floors at full speed, lungs burning, mind calculating. They'd have men covering the ground floor, the parking garage, every obvious exit. She needed to go somewhere unexpected. At the 28th floor, she burst through the service door into a residential hallway. Elderly residents, young professionals, families all living their oblivious lives while assassins hunted through their building. She moved fast, checking apartment numbers, remembering the building layout she'd studied. 2847. She tried the door locked, obviously. Behind her, the stairwell door crashed open. Clarice kicked the apartment door hard, right next to the lock. Once, twice. The frame splintered and she was inside, closing the door behind her as carefully as her racing heart allowed. The apartment was dark, quiet, empty. She moved through it silently, 1-bedroom efficiency, sparsely furnished. Someone who traveled for work, maybe. She needed cover. Time to think. Her phone buzzed. Text from Romolo. Where are you? Tried calling. She typed quickly. Santoro's men found me. Under attack. Penthouse compromised. The response came immediately. Location now. Building 28th floor. 3 hostiles. They knew I was there. Someone told them. A pause. Then. Matteo. Had to be. I'm 10 minutes out. Stay hidden. Clarice moved to the window, looking down at the street below. 2 black SUVs parked outside the building's entrance. 4 men visible, probably more inside. This wasn't a random hit, this was a coordinated operation. Her phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. She stared at it. Every instinct screaming trap. But intelligence worked on information, and right now she needed to know who was hunting her. She answered, said nothing. Miss Rivera. Giovanni Santoro's voice was smooth, cultivated. carrying the weight of old money and older violence. Or should I say Agent Rivera? I've been looking for you for 3 years. Clarice's blood went cold. How did you find me? Your friend Mateo is very thorough. When he mentioned a maid who knew far too much about financial forensics, I knew immediately. Giovanni's voice carried cruel satisfaction. Did you really think you could hide in my city forever? I'm not hiding anymore. No, you're dying. Along with Romolo De Luca and anyone else stupid enough to stand against me. Giovanni's tone hardened. You cost me 18 months of legal fees and nearly destroyed my organization. That's a debt I intend to collect personally. Then come collect it yourself instead of sending your dogs. Giovanni laughed. Oh, I will. But first, I want you to understand something. Michael Torres, your partner, he didn't die quickly. I made sure of that. He spent his last 20 minutes knowing you'd gotten him killed. Knowing you'd run like a coward while he bled out in your apartment. Clarice's hand trembled with rage. You're a dead man. No, Miss Rivera. You are. The question is whether you'll die alone in that apartment on the 28th floor, or whether you'll come down and face me with dignity. He knew exactly where she was. Clarice moved immediately, heading for the door. It exploded inward before she reached it, 2 men rushing through. She fired twice, one went down, the other returned fire. She felt impact, burning pain across her left shoulder, stumbled backward. The remaining man advanced, weapon trained on her. Then his head snapped forward and he collapsed. Behind him stood Romolo, gun smoking, face carved from fury. Can you move? He demanded. Clarice nodded, pressing her hand against the bleeding shoulder. It's a graze. I'm fine. You're shot. I said I'm fine. She retrieved the hard drive from her pocket, showed it to him. Evidence is intact. That's what matters. Romolo grabbed her uninjured arm, supporting her weight. We need to leave. Now. Building surrounded. I know. Giovanni called me. He knows everything where we are, what we're doing, probably our next 3 moves. Then we change the game. Romolo's eyes held deadly determination. No more hiding. No more playing defensive. We end this. How? Mateo's meeting is tomorrow night. Every territory boss, every soldier still loyal to my name, they'll all be there. Romolo helped her toward the service stairs. We crash it. We expose Mateo in front of everyone. And then we go straight for Giovanni. Clarice winced as they moved, but her mind was already working through scenarios. That's suicide. Giovanni will have the place surrounded. Mateo will have security. I know. So how do we survive? Romolo looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw the man who'd built an empire through sheer will. We don't plan to survive. We plan to win. There's a difference. Behind them, sirens began to wail. Ahead of them, the war they'd been preparing for rushed toward its inevitable conclusion, and neither of them was running anymore. The warehouse in Red Hook sat abandoned on the waterfront, surrounded by rusted shipping containers and forgotten dreams. Romolo had chosen it deliberately neutral ground where no one held advantage, where sound carried and escape routes were plentiful, where everything would end or begin again. Clarice worked quickly despite her injured shoulder, setting up recording equipment in the rafters, positioning cameras with angles that captured the entire floor below. Her movements were precise, professional, ignoring the pain that made her wince with each reach. How's the shoulder? Romolo asked, checking his weapon for the 3rd time. Functional. She climbed down carefully. Equipment's ready. We'll have video and audio from 4 angles. When Mateo confesses, we'll have irrefutable proof. If he confesses. He will. Clarice's voice carried certainty born from years of reading people. Men like Mateo can't resist gloating. You just have to make him feel like he's already won. Romolo looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd appeared in his life like an avenging angel, who'd been shot because of him, who was risking everything to help him reclaim what he'd lost. Why are you doing this? Really? Clarice met his eyes. Because Michael Torres died thinking I'd abandoned him. Because I've spent 3 years letting fear make my decisions. Because when I walked into your office that night, I saw a chance to be someone who fights back instead of someone who hides. She paused. And because you remind me that broken things can be rebuilt stronger than they were before. Before Romolo could respond, headlights swept through the warehouse windows. A single car, Mateo's Mercedes, black and sleek. He'd come alone, as instructed. Arrogant enough to believe Romolo was no threat anymore. Positions, Romolo said quietly. Clarice disappeared into the shadows, weapon ready, watching. Mateo entered slowly, scanning the warehouse with practiced caution. He wore an expensive suit, perfectly tailored, looking every inch the underboss ready to become king. When he saw Romolo standing alone in the center of the warehouse, something flickered across his face. Satisfaction. Boss. Matteo approached carefully. Why here? Why not the office? Because the office has ghosts now. Romolo's voice was hollow, defeated. Everything I built, everything I was, it died there. I can't go back. So what is this? Matteo stopped 20 feet away, hands visible, no weapon drawn. You sounded desperate on the phone. I am desperate. Romolo let his shoulders slump. The meeting tomorrow night, I can't face them, Matteo. The territory bosses, the soldiers, they'll see failure when they look at me. They'll see weakness. No one thinks you're weak. Everyone thinks I'm weak. Giovanni destroyed me in one night. One night, Matteo. 20 years erased. Romolo's voice broke convincingly. I can't lead them anymore. I can't even protect myself. Matteo's expression shifted, concern melting into something colder. What are you saying? I'm saying you were right. You should meet with them without me. Take control of what's left. Rebuild under your leadership. Romolo looked up, eyes haunted. I'm giving you permission. Take the family. Take everything. Just take care of them. Don't let Giovanni destroy what we built. Silence stretched between them. Then Matteo smiled. Not the careful smile of an advisor. The genuine smile of a man who'd finally won. You're sure? I'm finished. We both know it. Romolo gestured helplessly. Better you than Giovanni, right? Better you than watching it all dissolve into nothing. Better me, Matteo agreed, the words carrying weight they shouldn't. You know what's funny, Romolo? I've been waiting for you to say that for 2 years. Romolo's heart hammered, but his face showed only confusion. What? 2 years. That's how long I've been planning this. Matteo began pacing, energized by confession. Every move, every betrayal, every burned warehouse, all of it, perfectly orchestrated, and you never saw it coming. Matteo. Romolo's voice trembled. What are you talking about? I'm talking about how easy it was to destroy you, how blind you were. Matteo's voice grew heated, passionate. 20 years I stood in your shadow. 20 years of being the underboss, the second, the one who did all the work while you took all the glory. You think I didn't notice? We were brothers. We were never brothers. You were the king and I was the servant who you occasionally pretended to respect. Matteo stopped pacing, facing Romolo directly. Giovanni approached me 18 months ago, offered me everything, your territories, your respect, your throne if I helped him break you. And I jumped at it. Why? The question came out raw, genuine pain bleeding through. Because you never valued me, never saw me as an equal. Matteo's eyes blazed. So I fed Giovanni everything. Your security protocols, your financial structures, your meeting schedules. I orchestrated every attack, burned every bridge, isolated you completely. And the beautiful part? You trusted me until the very end. Romolo staggered backward, the performance of a man having his worst fears confirmed. The raids, the accounts. That was all you? Every single bit. With Giovanni's resources and my inside knowledge, you never stood a chance. Matteo laughed. And tomorrow night, when I stand before your soldiers and tell them you've abdicated, they'll follow me, because unlike you, I won't fail them. And Giovanni? What does he get? Half of what used to be yours. The other half is mine. A fair trade for his help. Matteo's expression hardened. But you won't be around to see it. Giovanni wants you dead. Not quickly, slowly. He wants you to suffer the way you made him suffer for years. And I promise to deliver you. The confession hung in the air like poison. Romolo straightened slowly, the defeated slump leaving his shoulders. His eyes cleared, hardened, became something Matteo hadn't seen in days. Dangerous. That's what I needed to hear, Romolo said quietly. Matteo's smile faltered. What? Lights blazed throughout the warehouse. Clarice emerged from the shadows, weapon trained on Matteo, face cold as death. Above them, cameras blinked red, recording everything. Matteo's face drained of color. No, every word, Romolo said, pulling his own weapon. Every confession. Your partnership with Giovanni. Your orchestration of my downfall. Your planned betrayal tomorrow night. All of it recorded, backed up, and ready to be distributed to every soldier, every territory boss, every family on the East Coast. Matteo's hand moved toward his jacket. Don't, Clarice warned, finger on the trigger. Matteo froze, calculations running behind his eyes. Weighing chances, measuring distances, considering violence. Then he lunged not toward Romolo or Clarice, but toward the cameras, trying to destroy the evidence. Romolo intercepted him mid-stride, and they crashed together into a support pillar. 20 years of brotherhood evaporated into pure violence. Fists, elbows, rage made physical. They fought like animals, no technique, no strategy, just fury and betrayal given form. Matteo landed a vicious punch that split Romolo's lip. Romolo responded with a knee that cracked ribs. They tumbled across the concrete floor, grappling, striking, bleeding. Matteo grabbed a piece of rebar, swung it viciously. Romolo rolled, felt it whistle past his head, swept Matteo's legs. Matteo crashed backward through a glass table someone had left behind, shards exploding outward. He lay there, bleeding, gasping, looking up at Romolo with hate. "You were my brother," Romolo said, breathing hard. "I was your fool." Matteo spat blood. "And you'll pay for this. Giovanni will make sure." "Giovanni's next," Clarice interrupted, moving closer. "And you're going to help us destroy him." Matteo laughed bitterly. "I'll die first." "No," Romolo said quietly. "You'll live. You'll live knowing everyone sees what you really are, knowing your name is poison, knowing you traded brotherhood for ambition and got nothing." Sirens wailed in the distance. Clarice's insurance. Police, she'd tipped anonymously. "That recording goes everywhere tomorrow." Romolo continued. "Every family, every soldier, every contact you ever made. You wanted my throne, Matteo? Congratulations. You just inherited my enemies with none of my power." Understanding dawned in Matteo's eyes. This wasn't death. This was something worse. Complete destruction of everything he'd schemed to build. As police lights flickered through the warehouse windows, Romolo and Clarice walked away, leaving Matteo bleeding in the wreckage of his own betrayal. The confession was complete. The war had just begun. The Santoro compound sat behind 12-foot walls in a Queens neighborhood where nobody asked questions. Giovanni had owned the property for 30 years, a fortress disguised as a modest estate, where power consolidated and violence was planned behind elegant curtains. Tonight, it would burn. Clarice sat in a stolen van 3 blocks away, surrounded by laptops and surveillance equipment, fingers flying across keyboards with the precision of a virtuoso. She'd spent the last 8 hours digitally infiltrating Giovanni's security systems, cameras, alarms, communication networks. Everything electronic in the compound was now under her control. "I'm in," she said into the encrypted radio. "Security feeds are on a loop. Guards will see empty hallways and quiet rooms while you move through." "But Clarice, this is insane. Giovanni has 30 men in there, maybe more." Romolo's voice came back steady, calm. "Then I'll make it quick." He stood outside the compound's eastern wall with 4 men, Vincent and 3 others, the last soldiers who'd remained loyal when his empire collapsed. 4 against 30. Suicide by any rational calculation. But Romolo had stopped making rational calculations 3 days ago, when Matteo's confession had spread like wildfire through the criminal underworld. Now there was only forward momentum, the kind that came from a man with nothing left to lose. "East wing is clear," Clarice reported. 2 guards at the kitchen entrance, 1 in the hallway beyond. Giovanni is in his office, 3rd floor, northwestern corner. "Can you get me there?" "I can get you close. After that," Clarice's voice held something that might have been fear. "After that, you're on your own." "Story of my life." Romolo checked his weapon full magazine, 1 in the chamber. "Vincent, you and the others hold the exits. No one leaves, no one calls for help." Vincent nodded grimly. They'd all heard Matteo's confession, had listened to him describe their organization's systematic destruction with pride. This wasn't about territory anymore. This was about blood. Romolo scaled the wall silently, dropping into shadows that seemed to welcome him. Clarice's voice guided him through the compound like a guardian angel with surveillance equipment. 20 feet ahead, turn left. Guard change in 90 seconds. He moved like smoke, years of violence translated into efficient motion. The first guard never saw him, just felt the chokehold that dragged him into unconsciousness. Romolo continued forward, leaving bodies sleeping behind him. Stairs ahead. 2 guards at the top. Romolo couldn't avoid these. He moved fast, ascending quickly, weapon up. The guards turned too slowly, 2 suppressed shots. Center mass. Both dropped quietly. 3rd floor, Clarice reported. Giovanni's office is straight ahead, 30 feet. But Romolo, he's not alone. 4 men inside with him. Copy that. Romolo approached the ornate wooden door, listening. Voices inside Giovanni's distinctive cultured tones, speaking Italian. discussing tomorrow's consolidation of territories now that Matteo's betrayal had created a power vacuum. He kicked the door open hard, weapon sweeping the room. 4 guards reached for weapons Romolo fired with cold precision, dropping 2 immediately. The third got a shot off that tore through Romolo's side, burning agony, but Romolo's return fire caught him in the throat. The fourth managed to draw completely, but Vincent appeared in the doorway behind Romolo, dropping him with a clean headshot. Then silence, broken only by Giovanni's slow applause. The Santoro boss sat behind his mahogany desk, hands folded, expression calm despite the violence that had just erupted around him. He looked older than his 63 years, gray hair perfectly styled, suit immaculate even at midnight. Romolo De Luca. I wondered when you'd come. Giovanni's voice carried neither fear nor surprise. Your reputation suggested you'd arrive sooner. I was busy exposing your partner. Romolo kept his weapon trained on Giovanni's chest, blood seeping through his shirt from the gunshot wound. Matteo sends his regards from police custody. Matteo was always expendable, a useful tool who thought he was a player. Giovanni smiled thinly. Much like yourself. Then why keep me alive? Clarice found your orders specifically keeping me alive. Why? Giovanni stood slowly, hands visible, moving to the window that overlooked his compound. Because death would have been mercy. I wanted you broken, Romolo, humiliated, destroyed in every way that mattered while still breathing to feel it. Because of the territory wars, the conflicts we've had? Because you challenged me, Giovanni said simply. In this world, that's unforgivable. When you rejected my alliance offer 7 years ago, when you publicly humiliated my family, you made this inevitable. So you spent years planning revenge. I spent years teaching a lesson. Giovanni turned to face him. And I succeeded. Look at you, your empire gone. Your brother a traitor. Your body bleeding from wounds you'll carry forever. You're a cautionary tale now. A king who forgot his place. Romolo felt something shift inside him. Not anger, something colder. You're right. The old Romolo De Luca is dead. The one who ruled through violence and fear and pride. That man died in that penthouse office. He moved forward, weapon steady. But someone new stood up in his place. Someone who learned that power without purpose is just destruction. Someone who realized that the empire isn't what matters, it's who stands beside you when everything burns. Giovanni's expression flickered. Philosophical. Is this the part where you kill me and reclaim your throne? No. Romolo lowered his weapon slightly. This is the part where I let justice handle you. Where I prove I'm not who I was. Justice? Giovanni laughed. You think the law can touch me? I've survived investigations, prosecutions, federal task forces. Not like this one. Clarice's voice came through Romolo's earpiece, and he smiled grimly. Not with the evidence Clarice gathered. Not with Matteo's testimony. Not with every digital record of your operations exposed simultaneously to the FBI, IRS, and every law enforcement agency on the East Coast. Giovanni's face finally showed fear. You're bluffing. Check your accounts. Check your businesses. Check your lawyers. Romolo's voice held grim satisfaction. While I was getting shot in your compound, Clarice was burning your empire from the digital inside out. Everything you own, everything you've built, it's all evidence now. Outside, sirens approached, multiple agencies converging on coordinates Clarice had provided, armed with warrants, evidence, and the chance to take down a man who'd evaded justice for decades. Giovanni lunged for the desk drawer, probably a weapon, probably suicide rather than capture. Romolo shot him in the shoulder, clean and disabling. Giovanni collapsed, clutching the wound, looking up at Romolo with something like respect beneath the pain. You've changed. No, Romolo replied quietly. I just finally remembered what I was fighting for, and it wasn't this. He left Giovanni bleeding on the expensive carpet, walked past the bodies of men who died for someone else's pride, and emerged from the compound as federal vehicles surrounded it. Clarice was waiting in the van, equipment already being packed away. We need to go, she said quickly. You're still wanted for questioning. We both are. I know. Romolo climbed in painfully, pressing a hand against his bleeding side. But Giovanni's finished. Matteo's destroyed. The evidence is out there. That has to be enough. Is it? Clarice asked, driving away as police lights painted the neighborhood blue and red. Enough for what you've lost? Romolo was quiet for a long moment. No, but it's enough to start rebuilding something better. They drove through Queens in silence, leaving behind the compound, the violence, the old way of power built on fear and destruction. Behind them, Giovanni Santoro was dragged from his fortress in handcuffs, an empire falling with each camera flash. Ahead of them, dawn approached with the promise of something neither had dared hope for: a future. 3 months later, Romolo stood in a legitimate office with legitimate business partners, discussing legitimate construction projects that wouldn't require anyone to disappear. The transformation felt strange, like wearing someone else's skin, but increasingly, it felt right. The gunshot wound had healed into a scar. Giovanni Santoro sat in federal prison awaiting trial on 43 counts. Matteo had pleaded guilty to racketeering and conspiracy, accepting 30 years rather than risk life without parole. The criminal empire Romolo had spent 20 years building had dissolved completely. Most of his former soldiers scattered to other families or left the life entirely. The territories he'd controlled were carved up by rivals and organizations that didn't waste time mourning fallen kings. And somehow, Romolo felt freer than he had in decades. Mr. De Luca, his new business partner, a real estate developer named Patricia Nguyen, extended a contract. "If you're comfortable with these terms, we can proceed with the Brooklyn project." Romolo reviewed the document carefully. Affordable housing development, job creation, community investment, legal, clean, building something instead of controlling something. "It's good," he said, signing. After the meeting, he found Clarice waiting in the outer office. She'd cut her hair shorter, traded her maid uniform and intelligence operative intensity for business casual and something approaching peace. Though Romolo knew the gun was still in her bag, and her eyes still scanned every room for threats. Some things didn't change. Some things shouldn't. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Signed. We break ground next month." Romolo held up the contract. "Legal construction, legal profits, legal everything. How does it feel?" "Strange, boring, terrifying." He smiled slightly. "Perfect." They walked through Manhattan together, two people who'd pulled each other from the wreckage and were slowly learning how to build lives that didn't require looking over their shoulders. "The FBI called again," Clarice said. "They want me to consult on organized crime cases, use my experience from both sides." "Will you?" "Maybe, if it means helping take down people like Giovanni." She glanced at him. "What about you? Any regrets?" Romolo considered the question seriously. "I regret the people I hurt, the violence I caused, the years I wasted building something that could collapse in a single night." He paused. "But I don't regret where it led me, because it led to that penthouse office, to you standing in that doorway, to everything that came after." Clarice's expression softened. Philosophical. "You've changed. People keep telling me that." Romolo stopped walking, turning to face her fully. But it wasn't change. It was remembering. Remembering that power without purpose is just destruction. That loyalty built on fear isn't loyalty at all. That the only empire worth building is one where you don't have to destroy yourself to maintain it. "And have you built that?" "I'm trying." Romolo gestured at the city around them. "One legal contract at a time. One legitimate business at a time. One day of not being who I was." They continued walking, heading toward the small office space they'd rented together, a base for the legitimate businesses Romolo was building and the consulting work Clarice was considering. Inside, Romolo made coffee while Clarice organized files. The domesticity of it would have seemed absurd 3 months ago. Now it felt natural, like they'd been doing this for years. Vincent called, Clarice mentioned. "He's settling into legitimate work too, security consulting. Says he's sleeping better." "Good. He earned it." Romolo handed her a coffee. "Anyone else from the old days check in?" "A few. Some wanted to know if you were building something new they could join. Others just wanted to know you were alive." "What did you tell them?" "That Romolo De Luca died in that penthouse. That who survived him is someone new." Clarice met his eyes. "Was I wrong?" "No." Romolo leaned against the desk. "That man, the one who ruled through fear, who measured worth in territories and violence, he's gone. And honestly, I don't miss him." "What do you miss?" The question caught him off guard. He thought about it carefully. "The certainty. Knowing exactly who I was, even if who I was destroyed people. Now everything's uncertain. Every decision could lead somewhere I can't predict." "That's called living," Clarice said gently, "as opposed to surviving. Is there a difference?" "Yes." She set down her coffee. "Surviving is what we were both doing before that night. You in your empire, me in my hiding. Going through motions, maintaining facades, never really present. Living is this uncertainty, growth, building something real, even when you're not sure it'll work." Romolo absorbed her words, feeling their truth. When did you get so wise? 3 years of being invisible gives you time to think. Clarice smiled slightly. Plus, intelligence training includes basic psychology. I'm just applying it to real life now. They worked through the afternoon, Romolo reviewing business proposals, Clarice researching legal frameworks for his new ventures. Occasionally, they'd exchange observations, suggestions, comfortable silences. Around sunset, Clarice's phone rang. She answered, listened, her expression shifting through several emotions before settling on something complex. That was the FBI, she said after hanging up. Giovanni's trial date is set. They want me to testify about his operations, the evidence we gathered. Will you? Yes. It's time to finish what I started 3 years ago. She looked at him. But it means Giovanni will see me. Know I'm alive. Know I helped destroy him. Are you afraid? Terrified, Clarice admitted, but also ready. He's in custody, facing life in prison. He can't hurt me anymore. And maybe seeing me there, testifying against him, will show him that running didn't mean I was weak. It meant I was smart enough to survive until I could fight back. Romolo moved closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're the bravest person I've ever met. And that's coming from someone who spent 20 years in a business where bravery meant survival. I'm not brave. I'm just done being afraid. That's what bravery is. They stood together as darkness crept across the city. 2 people who'd found each other in their darkest moment and chose to climb toward light together. Thank you, Romolo said quietly. For what? For not walking past my office that night. For seeing something worth saving when everyone else saw failure. For standing beside me when you had every reason to run. He paused. For changing my life in seconds. Clarice's eyes glistened. You changed mine too. Gave me a reason to stop hiding. A purpose beyond survival. So what now? Now? Clarice smiled. Now we keep building. Keep growing. Keep becoming people we're proud to be. She gestured at the office. The legitimate work. The new life. We build an empire that doesn't require destroying ourselves to maintain it. Romolo raised his coffee cup. To new empires. Clarice touched her cup to his. Built in silence. Built in honesty. Built to last. Outside, the city continued its eternal rhythm, indifferent to fallen kings and risen survivors. But inside that small office, 2 people found something rare and valuable, the possibility of redemption, and the strength to believe they deserved it. 6 months after the night everything changed. Romolo stood in the penthouse office where his empire had died. The building's new owners had offered him the chance to rent the space again, ironic, considering he'd once owned the entire floor. He'd declined. Some ghost should stay buried. But tonight, standing in the empty office with floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the city that once bowed to him, Romolo felt something like closure settling into his bones. Clarice stood beside him, watching the city lights with quiet contemplation. She'd testified against Giovanni 3 weeks ago, powerful, unflinching testimony that helped ensure he'd never see freedom again. The trial had been covered extensively, her story of survival and courage making headlines. She'd hated the attention but endured it because it mattered, because justice mattered. Because showing other people that running didn't mean surrender, it meant strategic retreat mattered. Why did you want to come back here? Clarice asked softly. Romolo took his time answering, studying the desk where he'd sat in his darkest hour. Because this is where I died, and where I was reborn. I needed to see it one last time as the person I became. And? What do you see? I see a man who thought power was everything, discovering that connection was the only thing. Romolo turned to face her. I see the moment my life changed direction. The moment you walked through that door and refused to let me drown in my own destruction. Clarice's expression held complex emotions. I was just a maid who knew too much. No, Romolo shook his head. You are someone who sees people others dismiss, who fights battles everyone else has surrendered, who refused to let fear make your decisions anymore. He moved closer. You saved my life that night, Clarice. Not by fixing my finances or exposing betrayal. You saved it by showing me that broken things could be rebuilt stronger than before. You rebuilt yourself, Clarice said. I just pointed out what was still worth saving. You did more than that. Romolo's voice carried weight beyond words. You stood beside me when everyone else had run. You risked your life, your carefully constructed invisibility to help someone you had no reason to trust. You gave me something I'd never had in 20 years of criminal empire building. What? A partner. Not a soldier or an underboss or someone following orders. An actual partner who challenged me, questioned me, made me better. Romolo's eyes held hers. You changed my life in seconds, Clarice. Not just that first night, but every day since. Every decision I've made, every business I've built, every choice to be someone better, it all stems from the moment you chose not to walk past this office. Clarice's eyes glistened. I spent 3 years invisible, hiding, convinced I didn't deserve to be seen, to matter, to contribute. Then I walked into this office and saw you, this powerful man, completely broken, and something in me refused to let that destruction go unanswered. What made you stop? What made you help? Because I recognized you. Clarice's voice was soft but firm. Not who you were, the Mafia boss, the criminal, the violent king. I recognized the person beneath all that, who was desperate for someone to see them as human, not powerful, who needed connection, not control. She moved to the window, hands pressed against the glass. And because for 3 years I'd been exactly what you were that night, alone, invisible, convinced I was finished. When I saw you in that same place, I couldn't walk away. Walking away would have meant accepting that broken things stay broken, and I wasn't ready to accept that. Romolo joined her at the window. So you rebuilt us both. We rebuilt each other. Clarice turned to him. You gave me purpose, courage, a reason to stop hiding. I gave you perspective, strategy, a chance to be someone better. We saved each other, Romolo. That's what partners do. They stood in silence for a moment, the city sprawling below them like a canvas of endless possibility. I have something for you, Romolo said finally, pulling a document from his jacket. Partnership papers. Legal, binding, 50-50 split of everything I'm building. The construction company, the legitimate businesses, all of it. Clarice stared at the papers. Romolo, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. Because none of it exists without you. You didn't just help me survive. You helped me build something worth having, something honest, something that doesn't require destroying ourselves to maintain. He held out the papers. You're not my employee or my consultant. You're my partner in every way that matters. This just makes it official. Clarice took the papers with trembling hands, reading through them carefully. When she looked up, tears tracked down her cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll keep building this with me. Say you'll keep being the person who sees what I'm not seeing, who challenges me when I'm wrong, who stands beside me when things get difficult. Romolo's voice softened. Say you'll keep being the best thing that ever happened to me. Clarice laughed through tears. That's a lot of pressure. You've handled worse. True. She wiped her eyes, composing herself. Yes, I'll be your partner. I'll keep building this crazy legitimate empire with you. I'll keep challenging you and supporting you and refusing to let you slide back into old patterns. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm going to be annoying about ethics and legal compliance. I'm counting on it. Romolo smiled, genuine, warm, the expression of someone who'd found something more valuable than power. You know what the strangest part of all this is? What? 6 months ago, I had an empire. Territory, soldiers, money, fear, respect, everything I thought I wanted. I was powerful, untouchable, the king of my world. He gestured at the city. Now I have a small construction company, a handful of legitimate businesses, and a partner who keeps me honest. And I've never been happier. Clarice squeezed his hand. That's because you finally figured out what matters, which is not being powerful, being whole, not being feared, being respected for the right reasons, not having soldiers, having partners. Her eyes held his. Not ruling alone, growing with someone. Romolo felt something break loose in his chest, the last remnant of who he'd been. The final piece of armor he'd worn for so long it felt like skin. Beneath it was something vulnerable, honest, and infinitely more valuable. I was wrong about everything, he said quietly. About power, loyalty, strength, success. I spent 20 years building an empire on fear and violence, convinced that was the only way. Then you walked through that door and showed me that the strongest thing I could do was admit I was broken and accept help rebuilding. We were both broken, Clarice corrected gently. We just had the grace to break in the same place at the same time, and the courage to rebuild together. They stood in that empty office, the place where a king had fallen, and 2 broken people had found each other for a few more minutes. Then they walked out together, leaving the ghosts and the past where they belonged. In the elevator, Clarice asked. Where to now? Dinner. Then that Brooklyn project meeting tomorrow morning. Then whatever comes next. Romolo pressed the ground floor button. The beautiful thing about legitimate business? You don't always know what's coming, but you know it won't require hiding bodies. Clarice laughed. Setting the bar high, I see. I'm ambitious, just differently now. They emerged onto the Manhattan street, two people who'd survived their own destruction and chosen to build something better from the rubble. Above them, the penthouse windows glowed with light from new tenants, new stories, new beginnings. You really did change my life, Romolo said as they walked. In seconds, just like the title says. The moment you said someone close to you wants you dead, everything shifted. No, Clarice replied, smiling. The moment you let me help is when everything changed. I just pointed out the obvious. You made the choice to trust, to change, to become someone better. We both did. Yes, Clarice agreed. We both did. And in the city that never stopped watching men rise and fall, two people walked forward together, not toward power or empire or control, but toward something infinitely more valuable, the life they'd chosen to build together. The story ends where it began, with a cleaning maid and a fallen king. But instead of desperation and collapse, it ends with partnership and possibility. The Mafia boss had indeed lost everything, and his cleaning maid had indeed changed his life in seconds. But what they built together, trust, partnership, redemption, that took time, and it was worth every moment. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, you're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.